The Empire's Fatal Mistake. In the quiet suburb of New Arcadia, Catherine Chen stared at the small device on her kitchen table. The quantum communicator, her husband's latest invention, blinked with an urgent blue light. Adrian was late coming home, and Catherine felt a coldness spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the autumn air filtering through the window. 3 years had passed since the Vexari Empire's massive ships had darkened Earth's skies. Their arrival had been neither hostile nor friendly, simply inevitable. The aliens, tall bipeds with iridescent scales and four-fingered hands, had presented themselves as administrators, bringing order to what they called the chaotic fringe of the galaxy. Catherine, once a diplomatic envoy to the United Nations, had been among the first humans to negotiate with the Empire. She had helped craft the terms of Earth's integration into the Vexari's domain. Many called her a collaborator, but she had fought for the best terms possible: limited occupation forces, continued human autonomy in local governance, and protection of key human rights. Adrian Chen had taken a different approach. As lead quantum physicist at the Global Science Initiative, he had quietly continued his research into faster-than-light communication, technology the Vexari had expressly forbidden. "They're afraid of it, Cat," he had whispered one night. "They control their empire through information bottlenecks. If we could communicate instantly across star systems." The doorbell rang, startling Catherine from her thoughts. She quickly covered the communicator with a dish towel and moved to the entrance. Through the peephole, she saw 4 Vexari enforcement officers, their scaled skin gleaming under the porch light. Catherine Chen. The lead officer's translator device converted the series of clicks and whistles into flat English. "We require your presence at the Central Administration Building regarding your husband, Adrian Chen." Her diplomatic training kicked in automatically, masking her fear with composure. "Has something happened to him?" "He has been detained for violations of Imperial technology restrictions, Section 12.7. Your presence is required for the reading of charges." The Central Administration Building, formerly the International Trade Center, had been redesigned with Vexari aesthetics: sharp angles, metallic surfaces, and omnipresent surveillance drones. Catherine was led through security checkpoints to a large chamber where a crowd had already gathered. On a raised platform stood Adrian, flanked by guards, his face bruised but his posture defiant. High Administrator Vexmach, the regional governor, addressed the crowd through his translator. "This human has developed forbidden technologies with the potential to disrupt Imperial communication security. Evidence of quantum entanglement devices was discovered in his laboratory, along with plans for distribution to human resistance cells." Adrian's eyes found Catherine's. In that moment, a lifetime of unspoken words passed between them. "The penalty for such actions is clear under Imperial law," Vexmach continued. "The accused is sentenced to immediate execution as an example to others who might consider similar acts of rebellion." Catherine surged forward. "No, he's a scientist, not a rebel. This violates our integration agreement." 2 guards restrained her as another approached Adrian with a metallic rod. The execution was swift and clinical: a bright flash, the smell of ozone, and Adrian's body crumpling to the floor. No blood, no drama, just the Empire's cold efficiency. Catherine screamed, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere outside herself. The guards released her, and she fell to her knees. The audience of humans and Vexari watched in silence, the former with horror, the latter with indifference. Vexmach's final words barely registered. "Let this serve as a reminder of the consequences of defying Imperial technological restrictions. All research by the deceased is hereby confiscated, and his associates will be questioned." The days that followed passed in a blur. Catherine moved through the funeral arrangements mechanically, accepting condolences from colleagues who kept a careful distance. Association with her had become dangerous. The Vexari had ransacked their home, confiscating Adrian's computers and research materials. But they hadn't found everything. 1 week after the execution, Catherine sat alone in their bedroom, Adrian's childhood music box in her hands. It had belonged to his grandmother, a survivor of political purges in another time and place. Always have a hiding place they won't think to look, he had told her once. Catherine turned the small bronze key 3 times left, once right, twice left again. The sequence Adrian had insisted she memorize. The false bottom of the box slid open, revealing a small data crystal and a handwritten note. "Cat, if you're reading this, they found me. Don't grieve long. What I've discovered is bigger than us. The quantum network can't be stopped now. The crystal contains everything. My research, contacts in the resistance, and something the Vexori don't know exists. Their fleet communication protocols. I love you. Make them regret what they've done." Catherine sat motionless, tears streaming down her face. The diplomatic part of her, the woman who believed in peaceful solutions, in working within systems to effect change, began to die that night, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. 3 days later, she stood at the door of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of New Arcadia. She had followed Adrian's encrypted instructions, carrying nothing but the data crystal and a small bag of essentials. The graffiti on the door, a specific pattern of lines that looked like random vandalism to the untrained eye, matched what Adrian had described. She knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. The door opened to reveal a young woman with close-cropped hair and wary eyes. "Password. Even stars die eventually," Catherine replied, the phrase feeling strange on her tongue. The warehouse interior revealed a hidden resistance cell. 24 people working among computers and makeshift laboratory equipment. At Catherine's entrance, all activity ceased. A tall black man with gray temples approached. "I'm Colonel Marcus Williams, former United Earth Defense Force. Adrian spoke highly of you, Mrs. Chen. We weren't sure you'd come." "Catherine," she corrected, her voice steady. "Adrian is dead. Mrs. Chen died with him. She produced the data crystal. He wanted you to have this, and he wanted me to help you use it." Williams studied her face. "You were a diplomat, a negotiator. Are you sure this is the path you want to take? There's no going back." Catherine thought of Adrian's body falling to the floor, of the High Administrator's cold pronouncement, of years spent believing the Vexeri could be reasoned with. "The Empire executed my husband for creating a tool of communication," she said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "They feared what would happen if people could speak freely across the stars. So now we'll give them something real to fear." She placed the crystal in William's hand. "Adrian gave you the weapon. I'll show you how to use it." Williams nodded, a spark of hope lighting his eyes for the first time. "Welcome to the Resistance, Catherine." That night, as Catherine lay on a narrow cot in the Resistance base, she stared at the ceiling and whispered to the husband who could no longer hear her. "They thought killing you would end the threat. Instead, they created something worse." Her hand clenched into a fist. "They created me." The rise of the Starbreaker. 6 months after Adrian's execution, the resistance cell had grown from 20 members to over 200. Catherine sat at the head of a planning table, surrounded by former military officers, scientists, and civilians united by their opposition to Vexori rule. "The quantum network is operational in 12 cities now," reported Dr. Eliza Wong, Adrian's former research assistant. "We can coordinate attacks with 0 risk of interception." Catherine nodded, studying the holographic map before her. Red dots indicated Vexeri installations across North America. Blue represented resistance strongholds, and Adrian's backdoor into their communication systems. "Working perfectly," confirmed Raj Patel, their lead hacker. "We can monitor all non-encrypted Vexeri transmissions, sometimes encrypted ones too, if they're using the older protocols." Catherine had surprised everyone, herself included, with her aptitude for strategic thinking. Years of diplomatic negotiations had taught her to identify leverage points, predict responses, and understand how hierarchical systems functioned. What had once been used for peaceful resolution now served a different purpose. "Their supply depot in Chicago is vulnerable," she said, zooming in on the map. Their patrol patterns show a 3-minute window every shift change. We go in tomorrow night. Small team, minimal casualties, maximum impact. Colonel Williams raised an eyebrow. You're still insisting on the casualty restrictions. The Vexari didn't show Adrian any mercy. Catherine met his gaze. We're not fighting to become them, Marcus. We strike their material, their equipment, their pride. Dead Vexari just bring reinforcements and reprisals against civilians. The Chicago operation succeeded beyond expectations, using Adrian's technology to coordinate with split-second timing. Resistance fighters disabled the depot's security systems, evacuated the minimal night staff without casualties, and planted charges throughout the facility. The explosion destroyed thousands of Vexari weapons and vehicles without a single death. Similar operations followed across the continent, then globally as Catherine's strategy spread through the quantum network. The Empire, accustomed to crushing rebellions through overwhelming force, found itself frustrated by an enemy that struck like lightning and disappeared, leaving destruction but no targets for retaliation. 1 year after Adrian's death, Catherine stood before representatives from resistance cells across 6 continents. No longer the polished diplomat in tailored suits, she wore utilitarian clothing, her once long hair cut short for practicality. A scar crossed her left cheek, a reminder of a mission in Moscow that had almost gone wrong. The Vexari are pulling their forces back to fortified positions, she announced. Their supply lines are stretched thin. For the first time, they're on the defensive. A resistance leader from Brazil leaned forward. They're calling you Starbreaker in their transmissions. Did you know? Their soldiers fear assignments to areas under your command. Catherine hadn't known. The name would have amused Adrian, his quiet, diplomatic wife, now the bogeyman of an interstellar empire. What began as isolated resistance actions evolved into coordinated global strategy. Catherine's forces targeted Vexari weaknesses systematically. Communication relays, transport nodes, command centers. Using Adrian's quantum network, resistance cells coordinated with perfect timing, creating the illusion of a much larger force. The turning point came 18 months after Adrian's execution. Utilizing data gathered from months of surveillance, Catherine implemented her most audacious plan yet, Operation Phoenix. Simultaneously across 23 locations worldwide, resistance fighters deployed modified versions of Adrian's quantum technology to disrupt the Vexari's neural implants, devices every Imperial soldier used for communication and tactical information. The disruption wasn't lethal, but rendered the soldiers temporarily disoriented and unable to coordinate. In the confusion, human forces seized control of 3 Vexari dropships, small interstellar vessels capable of reaching the Imperial fleet in orbit. Catherine personally led the assault on the New Arcadia shipyard, her team moving with practiced precision through the facility. As she secured the command deck of the lead vessel, she encountered a Vexari officer struggling to reactivate his neural systems. With surprise, she recognized High Administrator Vexmock, the same official who had ordered Adrian's execution. "You," he hissed through his translator, mandibles clicking in agitation. "The mate of the executed scientist." Catherine aimed her weapon steadily. "My name is Catherine Chen. My husband was Dr. Adrian Chen, the man you murdered for developing the technology that's defeating you now." For the first time, she saw fear in a Vexari's multifaceted eyes. "The Empire spans 500 worlds. You cannot hope to prevail." "We don't need to defeat your entire empire," Catherine replied. "We just need to make Earth too costly to hold. Starting with you." Rather than execute him, Catherine had Vexmock secured as a prisoner. "He's more valuable alive," she told her disappointed team. "And we're not them." The captured ships provided invaluable intelligence and technology. More importantly, they allowed Catherine's forces to take the fight to the Vexari ships in orbit. Using Adrian's communication protocols, they broadcast false orders, sending Imperial vessels on wild pursuits of phantom resistance ships. 2 years after Adrian's death, Catherine stood on the observation deck of what had once been the Vexari flagship, now repurposed as humanity's first true interstellar vessel. Around her, a multinational crew prepared for departure. On the view screen, Earth grew smaller as they accelerated toward the edge of the solar system. Their destination, Proxima Centauri, where intelligence suggested the Vexari maintained their regional command center. Adrian would barely recognize me now, she confided to Colonel Williams as they observed the operations. Sometimes I barely recognize myself. Williams shook his head. He'd be proud. You've taken his work and accomplished what he never could have alone. The Battle of Proxima Centauri became legendary. Outnumbered 10-1, Catherine's small fleet deployed a refined version of the quantum disruption technology directly against the Vexari command ships. As the enemy vessels fell into disarray, unable to coordinate their overwhelming firepower, the human ships executed a series of precisely calculated microjumps, appearing, striking, and vanishing before the Vexari could respond. When the Imperial Admiral's flagship finally surrendered, Catherine led the boarding party personally. In the ship's command center, she faced the regional Imperial commander, a Vexari elder whose scales had faded to pale blue with age. You have achieved what no species has in 8 centuries, the commander acknowledged. The Empire will withdraw from your system. Catherine's expression remained impassive, and the other subjugated worlds in this sector. The commander's translator crackled with surprise. You negotiate for others. Your victory extends only to Earth. My husband died believing in connection across the stars, Catherine replied. We've already begun sharing our technology with your other administrative regions. This victory is just the beginning. When Catherine returned to Earth, she found herself an unlikely hero. The woman who had once been criticized as a collaborator was now celebrated as humanity's greatest defender. Streets and children were named after her. The quantum network Adrian had begun now connected Earth to 3 other formerly subjugated worlds. On the anniversary of Adrian's death, Catherine visited his memorial alone. The simple stone in a quiet garden bore only his name and the words, "His light travels still." She knelt and placed her hand on the cool surface. They called me Starbreaker, she whispered, but you were the one who showed us how to reach them. Rising, Catherine looked toward the evening sky, where stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere up there, the Vexari Empire was reassessing its expansion policies. Somewhere, other worlds were tasting freedom because of what had begun here. The Empire had killed a man, thinking they were eliminating a threat. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous, a cause, a legend, and a woman with nothing left to lose. Catherine turned from the memorial and walked toward the waiting transport. Tomorrow, representatives from the newly formed Alliance of Free Worlds would arrive for their first summit. There was still much work to do. The Empire's most fatal mistake hadn't been executing Adrian Chen. It had been leaving his wife alive to ensure they would regret it. Retroclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.